Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles here from the channel Books on Stereo, and it's been a long time since I made a video, but I'm happy today to be bringing back my audiobook narrator interview series. I never quite came up with a great name for the series, but we'll get to that a little bit later. But today I will be interviewing the one, the only Rose Dioro, and I just mispronounced her name again. So it's Rose Dioro, not Rose Diorio, but Rose Dioro. And I do want to preface that this interview was filmed a couple days ago, so I'm kind of talking from future Charles to past Charles. But I do want to give a little bit of caveat since I can't control the gods that be at StreamYard. So there are some moments where the audio might be slightly out of sync and the video may be a little bit fuzzy, but that's just because of the internet connection and there's nothing that I can do with that. But if you stick with it a little bit, in a couple seconds, it will resolve itself. But without further ado, let's kick it back to past Charles and let's get into the interview. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and I'm here today with one of my favorite narrators. I have the one, the only Rose Dioro. So, like I said, me being the dummy that I am is Rose Dioro, not Rose Diorio. So it's Rose Dioro. Let's pronounce it with me. Rose Dioro, not Rose Diorio. Now let's continue on with the interview. First off, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Okay, and just to kick us off a little bit, I'm really curious about your journey to becoming an audiobook narrator. Was it something that you always wanted to do, or was it something that you kind of fell into? And then a second question to that is how you kind of got into the romance genre because you're very prolific in that space as well.
Well, I don't I don't know about how prolific I am, but I always wanted to do voiceover work, and audiobooks in particular have been a lot of interest of mine. My background is as a stage actor, so I've always been an actor, and I started really young in professional theaters. Um, but I kind of had to work my way up to having the stamina for this
Hmm.
super long form narration, which I did. I coached and I worked at and got started. And I had been at it for a few years before getting into romance, which actually was I had never had an experience reading a romance book until I was narrating one. So that was new for me and exciting.
Hmm.
I think my first step into romance was with Alessandra Torre, who I've done a
Hmm.
number of books for. But it wasn't until I became part of the Pucked series, Helena Hunting's Pucked series, that like this really was
Yeah.
it was I was solidly in the romance community at that from that point forward.
And I also too want to ask as a follow-up question to that, you see like more different types of narration come up. Like you have full cast, duet, and dual narration. How has that changed your recording process? And do you have one that you prefer more to do nowadays?
I've actually never done a duet narration.
Okay.
So I would love to do one because it feels very theatrical to me, and as I said, that's sort of
Mhm.
my background. And also, like, I spend so much time in this booth alone talking to myself. The idea of talking and being in a scene with another person is super exciting
Mhm.
to me. Um, but I like working duet. The nice thing, excuse me, dual. The nice thing about dual is, the freedom to record on my own schedule, which is important to me. And one of the things I really love about this work. And I think, trying to coordinate with another person obviously makes it a little more complicated, especially if you're in different time zones and all of that. And you have different,
Mhm.
our schedules are all vastly different in terms of we might be working. Oftentimes, when I do a dual narration, my co-narrator and I are recording in different months from one another because our schedules don't
Mhm.
line up. So trying to find a time where everybody's schedules line up, recording schedules line up is tricky. And I'm not really sure how people navigate that with duet. But yeah, I would love to try one. I would love to work on that. And I also, I don't know if you asked this or not, but I have done a number of romance, specifically romance books as solo narration.
Mhm.
And that's certainly the easiest because then I get to make all the choices on my own.
Yeah.
Um, but I do think as a listener, it's nice to have another voice in there, especially in a book that's multiple POVs. It really, I think, adds to the experience to be able to hear those perspectives in the
Mhm.
voices of the characters
Oh, that's
in
really
the
cool.
show.
And I'm also really curious with solo narration. I find that female narrators, when they do a male voice, it always sounds so much, it always sounds so good. So I'm like, how do you kind of like construct that voice for each of your male characters? Because it is different. I feel like whenever I listen to you narrate a male's point of view in a romance book, I'm like, oh, that's different. But like, it's not like you could have fooled me. It sounds like a guy narrating right now.
Oh,
So
that's
how do
great.
you pull that off?
That's great to hear. Um, for me, it's a lot of physicality. So when I'm narrating for all characters, as I move in and out of different characters, my body changes, the way I'm kind of
Mhm,
sitting, the amount of tension I'm holding or not in my body. So for male characters, I mean, every character is different and every character voice is different because I design them based off the specifics of those
mhm,
how those characters are written. But generally speaking, for male characters, I tend to relax more in my body
mhm.
than in the female characters where I'm a little more I don't know if you can even see in the maybe you could like, I'm sort of
Yeah,
sitting
I
back
could
more,
tell. Yeah.
um, where I'm a little more present for the female characters, and that just helps me get into a different headspace, but also physically just reminds me to bring my voice down. Another trick that I use is the male characters, I would say the default is like a little less expressive and a little
Mhm.
less punchy with my pronunciation. Just everything is just a little more relaxed to make that distinction. And I think part of that is because oftentimes the male characters in the books that I narrate are just like in control, right? So
Mhm.
if you're in control of the situation, you have no worries here, then you're gonna naturally be a little more relaxed and a more relaxed way of speaking. But of course, there are really intense moments too, and I narrate a lot of dark romance, and a lot of those male main characters are, really intense. So you have to kind of find a balance there. And of course, that's where the acting comes in. Like you're playing the
Mhm.
emotion in the scene, so it'll shift. But in general, to get to that male voice, I first start with my body. And then, you pitch it down as well. So like my natural speaking voice is pretty high, as you can
Mhm.
hear.
Yeah.
So I'm actively thinking about like pitching my voice down to a lower
Mhm.
register. And a lot of the characters are described with like having a gravelly voice, or most of the time for the
Mhm.
male characters our authors give us a lot of information about what those voices sound like. So I try to go off of that as much as I can. And I also spend a lot of time getting to know the voice of my co-narrator, if there is one. I know you asked me about solo narration, but
Mhm.
if I am working with in a dual narration, I try to match as best I can the voice of my co-narrator. But if it's just me, then I
You
just
can do
choose
whatever you want.
yeah, then I get to play as much as I want to.
And two, I think a lot of times we as audiobook listeners don't truly understand the process that goes into making audiobooks. Like a lot of times we feel like, okay, author, you release the book, where's the audio? You may have to wait 3 to 6 months. Like, how dare you, author? So could
Mhm.
you take us through what that process is from when you first get the manuscript all the way up through post-production?
What's my process?
Mhm.
So I'm a big prepper.
Yeah.
When I get a script, I always read the book all the way through, and I'm taking notes as I actively am reading. So as a character comes up, doesn't matter the size, it could be because I won't know until the end of the book how
Mhm.
frequently this character shows up. Um, I mark down basically every character that's in the book, any descriptors that come up, some bits of story that might be important to know about that person so I can kind of start to map out how all these people are connected to each other. Then I also go chapter by chapter, and if it's a chapter that I'm speaking in, I will mark up all the characters that show up in that chapter and then give a little summary of what happens, because sometimes I'm prepping many weeks in advance of actually recording,
Mhm.
just depending on what my schedule looks like. And so I want to make sure that I remember what the story was about, what the chapter was about. So when I get to that chapter, I'm, emotionally, mentally prepared to whatever acting choices
Mhm.
are needed. And then I'm also making notes about questions that I might have for the producer or the author, whoever my contact is. Um, if I'm working with a co-narrator, then one of the things I add to the mix of my prep is trying to connect with them. Um, if they're recording first, I'm going to ask them lots of questions about what are your, certain choices about different characters. Um, or if I'm not able to get in touch with them for whatever reason, I'll go on their Audible and try to listen to some samples of their
Mhm.
voice, like I was saying before, so I can kind of match them at least for their main character.
Okay.
Because most people have like, unless your main character has a specific accent, most people have a particular voice, like their go-to voice for a main character in a book.
Mhm.
So I can get a good, or at least for a genre. So like if I'm doing a dark romance, I'll try to find something in their Audible listing that seems similar to the book we're recording together, so I can hear a sample of like what their darker dude sounds like.
Okay.
Um, and then as I'm recording, I'm making little audio clips, like little MP3s of the voices of
Mhm.
each character as they come up so that I can reference them, go back and reference them for continuity purposes. So that when I get to chapter 10, Joe still sounds the same as he did in the first chapter. And sometimes I'll forget because you're kind of coming in and out of character so frequently. Sometimes I'll forget what I'll be in the same chapter and forget what that voice sounded like at the beginning of the chapter. So I always like having those audio references just in case I need a little reminder and I don't have to go searching through past audio. So that's what so for me, just in terms of like what this looks like, I've done my prep. I'm now in my booth. I'm recording alone. Most of the time I'm not working with a director. If I were in studio, there would likely be a director. Sometimes an engineer serves as a director too. But more often than not, engineers just checking for mistakes so they can stop you as you go to go back and do the mistakes. If I'm self-directing just at home, I'm also kind of listening out for when I might have made a mistake so I can go back. And I do something called punch and record. Or punch and roll. So I'll find just before where the mistake happened and then I'll press a little button on my computer and it'll play like 10 seconds of audio up to that mistake and then I'll jump in with a new version, like the updated
Okay. Yeah.
fix for that portion. Um, and so once I've recorded everything, I send it off to my editors and producer. There's an editor who's listening for mistakes, both like noises in the booth or also like proofing issues. Like if I missed something, I didn't find inevitably there's gonna be mistakes that I miss when I'm recording because I'm also acting in the
Mhm.
scene. So there's only so much you can pay
Yeah.
attention to at a time. So they're marking up all of that. And then they send me a list of pickups. And so those are all the mistakes I
Okay.
need to fix. I go back and do that, send it off. They put it all together. That they do all the post-production stuff and then it goes up. Sometimes I'll have questions that come up. And so sometimes I'm asking those questions directly to the author. Sometimes it's to a producer. Um, it just depends on the nature of the project, but it's a collaborative experience, right? So you're all kind of
Mhm.
in the game together. And the other thing that I do is I love to market my books. I love to kind of be a partner in that. So I'll usually send a list of marketing questions to my producer, whoever my contact is, so that I can let people know about the book, and that I can also like share on the anniversary of the release of the book in the future and
Mhm.
all of that. And occasionally I'll record a little bit of the book on video and be able to share that as well and get people excited about it. So there's lots of communication and collaboration that's going on that's not just about the recording itself, too.
Oh, that's cool. And I know you mentioned too about how your schedule is getting more and more busy. I was wondering, in terms of like timelines, do you ever have to like overlap with projects? Like I know you mentioned you prep like weeks ahead before you record a book. So how long does your prep and recording time? Is it usually like a huge gap nowadays? Like you read a book 2 months ago and then like you prep at the end of you actually do the audiobook at the end of the month? How has your
It
schedule kind of changed?
it really varies. It just depends on what's going on and when I received the script
Mhm.
too, because sometimes the script is ready well in advance. And so if I'm like, "Oh, wait, I have these 2 days where I finished something early and I have 2 days that are I don't have anything I'm working on," I'll go ahead and prep this thing even though it's not coming up for a while. Sometimes I get, sometimes the turnaround time is super tight and the author
Mhm.
finishes the book, they send it over and they need it back from me like, a week or two later. So I'll know that in advance and I'll plan my
Mhm.
schedule that okay, this is what I have to do. This is the only audiobook project I can work on for this chunk of time and that's what I'm going to be hunkering down to do. So there's not a lot of lead time. It just really depends. I've had a number of situations where I'm fully booked, but a project comes in that I just, like, really don't wanna say no to, and so
Mhm.
then I will have that sort of overlapping thing and squeezing stuff in and working at odd hours. I try to avoid that as much as possible, but you never know. And then other times, I'll be told that I'm gonna receive my manuscript on a certain date, and I'll have planned out an entire schedule, and then something happens and I don't get it on that date. So stuff has to shift, and then I'll end up with some overlapping projects in that way too. But I try to not overstuff my schedule because I know I'm not gonna do my best work if I'm running myself ragged, taking on too many projects. So I do like to give as much cushion whenever possible for a project. And I also run a theater organization and I have 2 little kids. So I've got other
Okay.
stuff in the mix.
Yeah.
So I know there are folks that are like book after book after book after book and just filling a month with, you know, anywhere between 5 and 10 projects, and I'm not someone who can do that because of the circumstances of my life and because of the way that I like to work, and because I'm
Mhm.
a super thorough prepper. So and I
Mhm.
like that, but when I'm really in a time crunch, I will sometimes work with a prepper, someone who will do that prep work for me, um and she's wonderful and is as thorough as I am. So and in fact more so even because she's if I'm not going to get to read the book from start to finish on my own, I need her notes to be extremely extensive. Um, and that's great. I don't do that often because I prefer, I really do prefer to do my own prep. But that's a wonderful tool in one of those moments where I get in a real time crunch and there's just so many hours in the day. So,
And I guess a follow-up question to that is, you see, like the like audiobooks have kind of exploded in the past, like I would say 2 years,
mhm.
especially in the romance category. So I was wondering with like working with like your traditional publishers like Podium or Tantor to authors financing their own audiobooks to publishers, have you seen like more diverse array of titles that are coming your way? And
Mm,
has the process changed with working with any of those different entities?
it's a great question. I don't really know. I mean, I've always
Hmm.
done a variety of genres and tropes within the romance realm. I know some people kind of have their niche, and I'm not
Hmm.
sure that I really do. Like, I've done a lot of rom-com, I've also done a lot of dark stuff, I've done a little bit of sci-fi. I've done a little bit of everything, and that's kind of always been the case for me. So I can't really speak to whether or not there's more, um, diversity in the styles of romance books and genres of romance books. Um, I know there's increasingly more LGBTQ focused books. I've just got, my first of those. I'm hoping there'll be more. Um, but beyond that, I don't know that I really know if there's, more and more
Right.
genres out there because 'cause I'm doing them all anyway. Whether it's changed my relationship or how I work with my contacts, my producers and publishers
Mhm.
that hire me, I've never I know a lot of people started out doing like ACX, which is Audio Book Creation Exchange, which in case listeners or viewers don't know, that's a way to for indie authors to publish their own audiobooks. I have not done a lot of work on ACX. That wasn't really where I got my start. I mean, I did a few books right in the beginning, but then I was working directly with publishers and production companies right out of the gate. So that's mostly been my contacts. I have in recent, I'd say in the last year and a half, gotten a little bit of outreach directly from authors, and every once in a while, I'll take on those projects. So maybe that is different, that they're looking, that individual authors are seeking me out, not on ACX or
Mhm.
anything like that. Like I'll get emails from them. I suppose that's a little different. What I have noticed, a shift that I have noticed is more and more narrators becoming producers or starting their own production
Mhm.
companies. And that's really fun because I get hired by my colleagues. Um, and because they are narrators themselves, the way that they structure the production process is super narrator focused, and that's been a really nice thing, and I would say a clear shift, that I think did come with a rise in interest in audio because
Mhm.
all of a sudden narrators are really understanding our own value and and understanding how we can really serve the audio industry beyond just being narrators, just because of the extra knowledge we bring with it, and also the attention we're getting in sort of the online romance community, and the more and more people are wanting to connect directly with narrators, and so it
Mhm.
is sort of a natural next step for a lot of narrators to then also put on a producer hat now. So that's something that I would say is new and influenced by what you were asking me about.
But two, I wanted to ask, you kind of touched on this a little bit. Now that audiobook narrators are getting on social media and gaining following, do you find that authors like explicitly write to your voice, or how has that kind of fan interaction changed your in and out days as a narrator, like going to conventions and stuff like that?
Yeah. It's been huge.
Mhm.
I started narrating back in 2014, I think,
Mhm.
but didn't start in romance until, like, I'd say maybe the end of 2015. And at that time, I had just had a kid, so I was busy with that, but also was very theater was still really my main focus professionally. Um, and it wasn't, and that went on for a number of years, and it wasn't until probably 2020 when I said, "Oh no, I'm really going to focus on romance narration, really in like as my main gig."
Mhm.
And I recognized at that time that the missing piece for me was engaging in social media in that way that you're talking about, in terms of making it a focus. I was starting to note I hadn't really been paying attention so much to what was going on in the social media world
Mhm.
for romance and for romance and audio specifically before that. And then I think what happened was a production company was looking for me and they couldn't find me, and they went
Yeah.
on my Audible and found my co-narrators and looked for someone that they already were in touch with to get my information. And so I said, "Oh, I need now's the time to
Mhm.
make a presence for myself online in this world." And when I did that, it was a whole new ball game for my work because I learned that there were listeners that had been looking for me too, and that had started to engage with other narrators online and wanted to be doing that with me. And I didn't really have much of a presence in a way for them to do that. And when I put some effort into connecting with that fan base, into really making more of an online presence for myself, immediately more work started coming my way because I discovered that the fans tell their authors who they wanna
Mhm.
hear, and they were asking for me, and that was amazing, and I'm still blown away by it. But there was a direct correlation between their interest and their making their interest known and knowing how to find me, and authors asking for me, um, when they were connecting with their publishers or their production companies. And as you said, since then too, I have seen more and more authors who apparently are writing with my voice in mind, which is just, I mean, that's a dream come true as an actor.
Yeah.
And that does definitely stem from the fan base and their interest and the authors wanting to kind of serve, their reader base. And
Mhm.
also just authors getting to know more about me too, in the same way that the listeners are, just because of my online presence. And you asked about conventions, so that's been a big part of it too, and something that's really amazing is to be making these connections with with the listeners online and then getting to meet them in person, is just as exciting for me as I think it seems to be for them. Like, we're all it's so important. This community is so important to this industry in a
Mhm.
way that I don't know, I mean, it's different, and I think, like, specific genres tend to have these fan bases, like, I know there's, like, a big sci-fi world too, but just straight up fiction that's not tied to a specific genre is just, people who enjoy novels, and that's
Yeah,
different, and I don't
no
know that
one no one looks at, like, the narrator like, "Oh, who is that narrator?" They're just, like, they're more attracted to the actual book or the
Yeah,
author.
it's different. There's something really special and specific about the romance community and the romance online community. And and yes, it's definitely influenced the body of work that's coming in and the type of work that's coming in for me and the way that authors are thinking about me and including me on their books.
And
It's
2, I wanted
great.
to ask, I know you can't say too much about this, but I always try to get the tea on upcoming audiobook projects. Is there anything upcoming for you that you're super excited about that you can share just a little bit of?
Well, I can tell you, um, there are a couple books up for pre-order now, so I can definitely talk about those. One is, released on November 16th. It's I guess or it's going to we're recording
Yeah.
this in advance, so it's going
It'll
to
be out
release
by now.
this Wednesday, but by the time you all see this, it will already be, you can already listen to it. It's Kennedy L. Mitchell's Mind to Hold, which is book 5 in the Protection series, and, that was with Teddy Hamilton and me, and then on January 3rd, and this is up for pre-order now, Link in Serena Ackroyd's A Dark and Dirty Sinners MC series. That was my first motorcycle club project I've ever worked on. That's book 2 in that series. That's also with Teddy Hamilton. We're doing a lot of books together right now. So that's one you can pre-order, and listen to in January. Um, I do have this is a less steamy romance, and I'm actually gonna be releasing it under a different name, and it's not until next summer, but I just finished my portion of it. A book by Sarah Reddy.
So this book doesn't specifically have a cover yet, but it will be out sometime in 2023. So sorry you don't have a cover to look at, but you can jot down the information in your Goodreads TBR or whatever have you. And it's probably up on Goodreads, so you can add it to your reading list as well.
And I am in love with this book. I can't say anything. I can't say the title or
No.
anything about it, just that it's happening, and it's phenomenal. And I can't wait for folks to hear this story, but there are some sex scenes, but they're not like closed door scenes, but they're also not super steamy, which is why I'm putting it under a different name for what, like you said before, you
Yeah.
expect a certain
You're
something
like,
from me.
what?
um, but if you love romance, I do think you'll love this book, just as long as you know it's not going to be one of the steamier ones, but it is an epic romance. It's really excellent. Um, and then I'm recording PJ Fiala's entire backlog of books with Troy Duran, with Brickshop Audio. I've lost count of how many we've done at this point, but I think there's like
That's a
31.
lot.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
booked out through like the end of next year. So with those not booked out, I mean there's space, but I'm
Mhm.
going to be working on that all the way through 2023. And I never know when those are going to release. So there's probably one coming up any day now because we're just constantly churning them out. But so that's happening and will be ongoing. And I'm not sure that I can talk about anything else, but there's a lot. There's a lot coming.
No. But 2, I wanted to ask, like, on a fun, lighter side, has there been any funny mistakes or funny moments that you had while recording an audiobook that just make you chuckle to this day?
Yeah, people ask me to, like, post bloopers and stuff all the time, like, I don't really
Yeah.
have I don't have anything funny that happens, or if I do, I just don't catch it in the recording because 'cause I'm, like, it's so ingrained to me when I make a mistake to just stop and go back, and I don't even
Mhm.
think about it, it's just, like, natural. I've been trying to capture kind of funny moments. um, I wish I could think of the specifics. I know recently the other day, I just, like, could not get this sentence out. I had to redo it so many times. It was a really simple sentence. I don't know what was happening, and I can't remember what the sentence was, but yes, I was like in a fit of laughter that day because I just like, what is happening with my tongue? I can't get my mouth to make these words happen. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't have a lot of funny things happening in the booth. One time, and I posted a video of this actually, that I came into my booth. It's not about recording, but I
Mhm.
came into my booth and there was a spider sort of hanging down. And I like reached over to turn the light on for literally half a second. And I looked back and the spider was gone. And I never found the spider. And it could be living in my booth to this day. And that I think it was both funny
That's
and
terrifying.
terrifying. So who knows? Spider just hangs out in here with me. So every time I come in, I'm kind of thinking about that in the
You're
back of
kind of
my head.
weary.
Yeah. But besides that, I wish I were, you know, my life were more comical, but it's not.
And before I get to my final questions, I do have one curveball question that I always ask all my narrators. So this topic is a little bit dated. It happened a couple months ago, but there was a
Okay.
whole discussion on Twitter about AI narrated audiobooks and how that could or may supplant human voice narrators. I can give you a little bit more detail, but they were just saying, I think it's like Google is producing, like there's trying to pilot test that program. I know a number of authors and narrators spoke out about it, but as a listener, I do appreciate that human voice, especially when you're acting the audiobook instead of just reading it. But I wanted to hear
Yeah.
your thoughts on that whole debate. Do you think that's something that is a possibility, or do you think it's just going to be we more treasure those human narrators that we have doing our audiobooks?
I definitely think it's a possibility, and I think it's horrifying. Like, I think the trouble is that people don't realize just how very real this issue is.
Mhm,
It's absolutely coming. And I'm so glad you asked this question because I think we need to be talking about it because it is happening and we need to be aware of what it means. Um, I think especially like for authors who have never done audio before and they're like, oh, I'll turn my book into audio. This is way less expensive. So I'll do it this
mhm,
way. It's not, they're not getting the same experience. I'm really grateful that there are so many listeners that understand that who are audiobook listeners that are not going to listen this way because
mhm,
we we're actors. A robot cannot be an actor. A robot can recite what you tell it to. Um, it can mimic certain emotion, but it's not the same as an actor organically in the moment feeling an experience and conveying that with their voice. I mean, for example, I'll do sometimes when I stop and have to re-record something, it's not because I made a mistake, it's because I didn't feel like the way I delivered that information was as it didn't tell the story I wanted it to tell in that
mhm,
moment. Because there's 20 different ways you could say the same sentence and it would mean 20 different things. And so sometimes I wanted to say something a little bit different, so I go back and re-record. A computer's not going to do that. They're going to do what their programmer told them to do. And that's what you're going to get. And you don't have a human thinking about a real human experience in making strategic acting decisions. And it's just there's nothing the same about it, but it will fool you. It will fool you really
mhm,
well because the technology is good, but you're not gonna get the same experience, and you're not and the community piece, I think, is also, as we were talking about, it's a huge part of the experience of listening to these books, and you're not gonna be in community with a computer. You're not gonna be able to
mhm,
connect with that narrator, which from what I hear from listeners, really enhances their experience of listening when they know a little bit about the person behind the voice.
mhm,
When they've gotten to have some kind of human interaction with them, it really impacts their experience, and you're gonna lose that completely. I mean, I could go on and on about
mhm.
the jobs that will be lost, but the truth is it's the work, it's the product that's affected, and we're all gonna suffer for it. And just in the art of it, like, this is an art form, and who wants art made by a computer? I don't I don't want that.
No, thank you. But as my final question, I want, as this is a little bit of a lighter, fun question after I threw you a little curveball. What are some of your favorite audiobooks? It could be audiobooks that you have done or audiobooks that you just personally love.
Yeah, so I I think I grew up being forced to listen to audiobooks like John Grisham books, for example, when I was a really little kid on long car rides with my parents, and I hated it, because they were just inappropriate for me at that age, and it
Yeah.
was super boring, and also, narration at that time was very different. It really was more just, "We're gonna read this story to you, and we're not gonna act it," and that just wasn't something that was appealing to me. So I didn't actually start really actively listening to audiobooks until I started wanting to record them and listened more as like a fact-finding mission, like, "What is this, and what do I like, and what don't I like?" as I was making decisions about my own narration. And so one of the first books that I listened to was Gone Girl. And that's
Oh.
when I absolutely fell in love with Julia Wayland's
Mhm.
narration. She is my all-time favorite, and I will listen to anything she records. And if you haven't listened to Gone Girl audio, definitely listen to that book. It's not romance, but it is an exceptional recording. Um, I'm just gonna give you a list of Julia Wayland narrated books right now because that's my love. I also another one that was like a game changer for me was her, recording of is it Educated or Education? I can never remember the exact
Oh, I
title.
know the title you're talking about. It's the autobiography.
Yes, and her narration in that is exceptional,
That's
and I
amazing.
learned so much as a narrator from listening to that book. In romance, something I listened to maybe last year was Real by Kennedy Ryan, and I was particularly interested in that one because, there's music. She
Mhm.
had commissioned music to be written for that story, and it's actually sung and recorded, and I'm a singer, I'm a musician, and that's, like, my dream is to be
Yeah.
able to get to do more of that in audiobooks. That production was phenomenal. The story's amazing,
Mhm.
but all the narrators involved, the editing, the whole thing was so, so good, so I definitely recommend that. Um, as for my books, some things that folks that I hear from folks about most are the books in the Pucked series. Though I recorded those so long ago, and I feel like I've changed a lot as a narrator, I kind of wish I could
Mhm.
re-record them. I mean, people are enjoying them, so I'm super happy for that, but if I were doing it now, I think I'd make a lot of different choices, so I'm kinda like, "I
Okay.
wanna do those again." But those are a fan favorite, I'd say. Um, some of my personal favorites and also books that I hear from folks a lot about are Deborah Anastasia's Drowning in Stars and Stealing the Stars, which I did with Benjamin Charles, who I love to work with. Um, I those are like a coming of age romance
Mhm.
stories. So I liked those because I sound young. I sound like really young, and I find that when I get to play youthful characters, I really connect with them in a different way that like 18 like, a graduating high school age or
Mhm.
very early 20s just comes really naturally to me. Um, so I really enjoy when I get to play with, like, a younger age range like that. The book that I talk about a lot, is The Five by Lily White. It's
Oh.
very dark, super triggery, but it was a turning point in my narration. Just the way that I approached narration, the way I came up with voices, my understanding of how I was engaging with the text. I was a completely different narrator out of that, and that's actually the book that also got me to start engaging in social media and creating an online presence because it was Podium Audio who came looking for me and couldn't find me, and so that whole experience of narrating The Five between just, like, how it came about with my getting connected to Podium and the decisions I made going forward about how I was going to invest in romance specifically and make a
Mhm.
online presence for myself, and also for me as an actor, as a narrator, what that book brought about for me, that was a big turning point, so I definitely recommend that, but all the trigger warnings on that book, so if you know, have any
Oh.
sensitivities around, um, like harrowing situations and sexual assault and things like that, you do not want to read that book. But if that's something that you feel more comfortable engaging with, highly recommend. Um, and another recent one that I really enjoyed working on that I don't feel like gets enough attention is KK Allen's Enchanted God series. That's like a
Oh,
fantasy romance. Um, and like lots of magic and mermaids and all kinds of cool stuff going on there. And it's also a coming of age story. So again, I got to play in this world that I just really enjoy being in. Um, so I would say that I could keep going, but I'll stop there, I guess. But I would say like the books that I've done my most recent, like my last, I don't know, 15 books, I feel like any of that, I've been really enjoying what I've been working on lately and feeling in terms of my narration, I feel like and I'm really happy with where I am in my craft as a narrator. And so
mhm.
my more recent books, I just feel like I've just really been enjoying them and I hope that listeners will too. Yeah.
But to land us in, I want to give you time to plug all your social medias. Like, where can everyone find you at?
Yeah, so I'm Rose Dioro VO on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And I also have, as I said, Riley Sloan started a Facebook group um, called the Rosebuds, and you can find that at on Facebook at groups/Rosebud Group. I also have a website, rosedioro.com, so you could just go to my website and you'll find
Mhm.
information about all of this stuff. Where else can you find me? I think that's all the places, right? My
Okay.
Facebook group, Facebook page, Twitter, Instagram. Oh, and, as I said, I send out emails. So, if you go to my website, you can sign up for those, or you can go to community.rosedioro.com/rosebuds. And when you sign up to receive my emails, which I send about once a month, you also get a free download. um, I collaborated with Deborah Anastasia. Her book, For All the Evers, has never received audio. So we did a 45-minute excerpt from that book that you can only get by signing up for my emails. So if you do that, then you get your free download and you also find out what's coming up. And I run giveaways and stuff. And actually, another thing I want to plug is for
Mhm.
November, where I'm just announcing this today. Today is I don't know, whatever day it is, but it'll be ongoing by the time you see this, I think. I'm running a giveaway that I do every year for NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month, where I create audio teasers for indie authors who've never had a book turned into audio before. And so the way that giveaway is going to work is fans, readers, listeners will nominate authors that they love that do not currently have audio,
Mhm.
and then we'll pick two winners for that, and I will create a teaser for a chapter of each of their for a book for each of those winners, and
Yeah.
I'll be recording those. Um, I'll do a live recording session for that. So you can actually watch me in the booth as I'm recording. So mistakes and all. It's not a performance for you. It's you
And
kind of peeking behind the curtain as
yeah,
I actually record these teasers. So more information on that will be coming soon. But today, whatever today's date is, Monday the 14th, I
14.
think it is.
Yeah.
That giveaway is going live. But by the time you see this, it'll be up and running. So you can just check out my social media to find out how to participate in that.
Oh, that sounds cool. I already have like 20 authors that I will just throw at you. I'm like, do the
Great.
teaser. Actually, just give me a full audiobook. It's okay. I will find ways to finance it. Just make it just for me. I will like, Rose, I'll send you this like 500-page book. I'm like, just record it just for me. Like, I just want to hear it on audio.
Sure. Yeah.
Just like
But
have
then
like
you
my
make a
own
good point.
audiobook
If
of
you
yeah.
That's a really good point, though. If you have more than one author, feel free to you can enter as many times as you want in terms of like if you have multiple authors. It just gives more authors a chance to
Mhm.
potentially win this giveaway. So
For everyone who's watching, I will link all of Rose's social media links, her website, and everything will be down below in the description box. So you can go all the way down there, click away, and
yeah.
follow to your heart's content. But thank you so much again, Rose, for coming on my channel. It's been so amazing. It's been such a long time coming
Yeah.
talking with you. But thank you again so much for coming on my channel. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions or any comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. And I'll catch you guys for a brand new video. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
So, all right, I hope you enjoyed that interview so much. I can announce that I do have two more audiobook narrator interviews coming up, pending scheduling. I won't tell you who those are, but if you have any questions that you want me to ask these narrators, let me know down in the comment section down below, and I will catch you guys with a brand new video. Bye.